It's time to do another update on how the travel gear that I'm using is working out. And I just spent 7 weeks walking across Spain, and I think I had a lot of time to put the gear that I brought to a good test. Me and my husband, we just walked the Camino de Santiago. We walked the French way, so we started in France, in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and we walked all the way to the ocean to Finisterre. So in today's video, I want to talk about my favorite items that I brought. I want to talk about the ones that I really cursed every time I had to use them, and I really regret that I brought them. And I'm also going to talk about a few things that I wish that I brought that I was really missing during my trip. On this trip, I was extremely intentional with what gear I brought with me because I traveled very light. I had to carry everything for the whole duration, so I only traveled with a 25-liter backpack, and my weight was more or less around 5 kilos, I think, without the water. So packing for this trip was really a challenge, and I already did a video where I show you what I brought, and I will link it below. So let's jump right in and start with the gear that I was very happy that I brought. The first thing that worked out perfectly for me was the Night Ice gear tie, and this is just a flexible piece of tie. On the Camino, I found lots of uses for this thing. For example, we used it to lock doors or also shower doors. I also used it to form kind of like a hook in the shower because many times there were no hooks in the bathroom. So I would just form something like this and hook it in the door handle, or even form something like this and hook it over the door and just use it to hang up my things. And it was also extremely useful to attach the clothesline. The next item that I was very happy that I brought is my Grail Ultra Press, which is a water purifier. And yes, it's not technically necessary on the Camino, but just because it's drinkable does not mean it tastes good. And as you may know, I'm extremely picky. As soon as the water tastes a little bit like chlorine or anything else, I really have a hard time drinking it. And this water purifier also removes all those bad tastes for me. And along the way, there were lots of fountains where you could refill your water, but on many of them it was not really clear if the water is drinkable, or it clearly said that it's not. And in those cases, I always could get water when I needed to without worrying, thanks to my filter. And another thing that was really helpful on the Camino is that it's easy to share the filtered water with other people because you don't have to suck it through a straw. It gets filtered inside and then you can just pour it out. So it was very nice to share the filtered water with my husband and other people on the way. The next item is something I spontaneously picked up before I left, and that's a seating pad out of this thin material. I mean, it's so thin and lightweight, it was not even noticeable. This sitting pad was extremely useful because for many days we had lots of rain, so everything was wet, and also there were lots of cold stones, so this thing also insulated it. And I always just had it folded on the outside of my backpack, and it was easy to grab every time I wanted to sit down. And in the hot weather we found another use, so I would wrap it around our cold drinks to insulate them. The next thing that I was very happy that I brought is this stick from Vic. It's an inhaler stick. Usually I use this stick when I have a cold, so it's with menthol and stuff. But on the Camino I was so happy to have it because there were so many nights where I was sleeping with 20, 50, 100 people in one room, and for some reason everybody wanted to sleep with the windows shut and the whole thing hermetically sealed so that no fresh air would get in. But then of course the whole room would just start to smell. People would fart, people would breathe, all the air was gone. So there were so many nights where I just spent sniffing my stick all night long to be able to tolerate the air quality in that room. The next item that I was very happy that I brought was my Apple Watch. One of the things I liked the most was to have the alarm on the watch, because then it would just silently vibrate on my wrist and wake me up. There were so many people in those dorm rooms that just did not care about the other people and had their alarm clocks go off at any time. So from 4:30 until 7, you could be sure that sometimes there was an alarm clock every few minutes. So I personally was very happy that at least I did not have to bother other people. And the second thing that was extremely useful was to pay, because my wallet was usually in my dry bag inside the backpack. So it was much easier to just go and pay everywhere with the card on the watch than having to get my things in and out. The next item that I brought, and if you watched a few of my videos, you know that this is one of my favorite things ever, is my Tiny 2 flashlight. So it's just an extremely small flashlight that I can charge with USB-C. And I usually use it at night, so the lowest setting is 1 lumen, which is more or less the brightness of 1 candle. And it's great to just have a little light in the dorm room to get my things when I need to, or also go to the toilet at night without having to bother everybody else. And while I was walking on the Camino, Nightcore released the newest version, the Tiny 3, that they were kind enough to send me. It's basically the same as the older version. The only thing that I always wished that the Tiny 2 would have would be warm light, because I use it every night when my husband is already sleeping and I don't want to sit in the complete dark. And this new version has it. So I'm going to test this one now for the next few months and I will report back how it goes. The next item that I was very happy that we brought is my small C2 Summits clove line. It really packs very small, so it was barely noticeable in my backpack when I didn't need it, but we often needed it because so many times in the albergues there were only a limited amount of hangers or drying racks, and they were usually full by the time that we got there. And with this thing we could just turn bunk beds into a drying rack, or sometimes we put it outside from the fence or between the poles of the clothing racks, and we were a little bit more independent and did not have to find or wait for space to free up. And another thing that I like very much is that the line is 2 lines. So basically they are 2 parallel lines. And there's also these little pearls that you can slide around to securely attach your things. So we needed less clothes bags. The next item that I brought for the first time on this trip were these Peak Design packing cubes. And I brought the stretch ones. So this one is the XS stretch one and this is the XXS stretch ones. So my plans with this thing was first to use it as a snack pouch, because I thought with the elastic fabric it would basically mold around whatever I decided to stuff inside. And that worked extremely well. In the beginning I used the XS size, but I quickly figured out that for the snacks that I brought, the XXS is big enough. I usually had a package of nuts in there and some tissues. I usually brought some Haribos or some sweet candy for some sugar. And I also had some plastic cutlery that I picked up along the way that I just held on to. And for those things, that size was perfect. The larger one I brought because I thought that I could probably put my wet socks and stuff that didn't dry overnight inside of that thing. And since it has these loops on the side, that I could just hang it on the outside of my backpack to dry my things inside. And honestly, I never ended up doing this because first off, most of my things usually dried overnight. And second, we had so many rainy days, and then everything that I would just have put on the outside of my backpack would have been soaking wet. The next thing that I was extremely happy that I brought was my C2 Summit towel. I already own all sizes by now because I really enjoy using them. And the one that I brought with me on the Camino was the large size, so it was large enough for me to dry myself off after a shower. And it came in useful so many times because in the albergues they usually don't give you a towel. There is no towel when you wash your hand. There is no paper towels to do that. There is nothing. So you really need to bring your own thing if you plan to stay in the albergues. And that's why I really like the C2 Summit Airlight towels, because they just dry so quickly. So when I hang them on the bunk bed, then usually they're dry overnight. And if I manage to get them outside and there is the sun and maybe even a breeze, then it's really dry in no time again. And one thing that I'm wearing every night since a few months now, and that was also extremely useful on the Camino, are my Soundcore sleep buds. So they're very tiny sleep buds that I can just plug into my ear at night. And they're not noise cancelling, but they play kind of a white noise all night long. And that was perfect to blend out all the snoring and human noises in all those dorm rooms. Unfortunately, they did not help too much against the stale room in the bedrooms, or also the inconsiderate people at 5 o'clock in the morning who started packing, turned on the lights and just bumped against all the beds and made everybody awake. But at least noise-wise, I was covered. And the last thing of the things that I loved and was very happy that I brought was my nano bag, which is just a very small, very packable, extremely lightweight grocery bag. So obviously it was extremely useful when we went to buy groceries, but I also really enjoyed using it every night. So many nights we had bunk beds and often they're not even against the wall or there are large gaps. So everything that you have with you in your bed will fall at some point. At least that's what it did for me. So I always put all the things that I had with me in my bed in this little bag, and then I would tie the handles on the frame of the bunk bed, and this way all my things were secured at night. So now let's move on to the things that I really regret buying. And the biggest regret for me was that I brought a poncho instead of my rain jacket. I already own a very good rain jacket, and I basically decided to bring the poncho because the internet recommended it for the Camino, and also it would save me 200 grams of weight. But for me the poncho was like a constant struggle. I did not like it. I found it very difficult to put it on with my backpack. I'm too clumsy for that. I always got extremely hot underneath, and there was like no zipper or nothing that I could open. The wind would blow it all over, and then I would usually also be wet all the way up to my hips like I would be with a rain jacket. And there were two things that annoyed me the most. The first one was that since I brought the poncho and it would also secure my backpack, I thought I made the mistake and did not bring a rain cover for my backpack anymore. So even when it was a light rain, at some point I had to put on my poncho. And the second thing that I found very annoying was that it only had one use. So if I had brought my rain jacket, I could have used it in colder mornings or on windy days, whereas the poncho for the most time was just in my bag and was not useful at all. So if I would walk the Camino again, I would next time do it differently. I would definitely bring a rain jacket. I would definitely bring a backpack cover. And then I would do like my husband did. I would bring a lightweight umbrella. I cannot tell you how many times I was jealous when I was sweating in light rain under my huge humongous poncho and he was just happily walking with his umbrella in the breeze. And the second extremely clever thing that he brought was for those days where it would rain a lot, he would just wear one of those very lightweight festival ponchos, and he just used it to prevent that the water would run down between the backpack and the bag. So I have to admit that I think he did it much more clever than me with my poncho. And the second thing that I regret bringing is one of those hats with the white brim, because I really did not enjoy wearing it. And it's another one of those things where I read just too much on the internet, and instead of bringing the gear that I, since I hike a lot, know that is working for me, I brought what the internet suggested. And of course, it did not end up working for me. And the reason why it sounded logic to me to wear this thing was that on the Camino every day, since you're walking in one direction all across Spain, you always have the sun in the same position, which is right behind you, and it goes into your neck. And then of course a white brimmed hat would give you a lot more protection in this area. But what I did not consider, and what probably was just the model that I was using, I don't know, is that first off, I would constantly, with the brim of the hat in my back, would bump on the top of the backpack and this whole thing would slide forward. And then of course I also lost the string very quickly, and then every wind, every little breeze would just blow this hat away. And I think it was the second day after Roncesvalles where it was a very strong wind and my hat already blew directly into the cow poop. So that was the day I started disliking my hat. And there was another thing that really annoyed me about the hat, because I was also traveling with my very thin headband that I like very much on colder days, also on warm days, to like soak up the sweat. But when I was wearing my headband, I had to wear like my ponytail up here. And when I was wearing the hat, I had to put the ponytail down there. So I was constantly readjusting basically the only hairstyle that I know how to do, the ponytail. No, that's not true. I also know how to braid, but that's then about it. So this was also a little bit too much work for me. So in hindsight, for me, I just wish that I would have brought the cap that I always wear for hiking with me instead of a hat. But I totally understand why some people enjoyed wearing them. And I also saw some that have like a hole up here to get the ponytail out. So maybe these things are the smarter solutions than the one that I bought. And now, last but not least, we get to the things that I did not bring, but that I really wish that I brought. The first thing that I really missed was our little salt and pepper shaker. We're having this since a few years. We usually travel with it and we also hike with it. And it has two compartments. So one is salt, one is pepper. We decided to leave it at home for this trip, however, because usually when we go to Spain, they also have those small salt packages. And we just thought that we could restock along the way. But for some reason on the Camino, very few supermarkets even had them. And also many albergues did not have any salt. So often when we wanted to cook, we just ended up buying a big package of salt and leaving it behind. At least I hope that the ones that came after us put it to good use. But it would have been nice every once in a while to just have this thing and refill it yourself with salt and pepper and probably buy a few less packages of salt. The next thing that I really wish that I brought is a little bit of perfume. I always travel with some perfume in this small 10 milliliter refillable spray bottle. I like them very much because they're very cheap and they never leak and they're very lightweight. So I usually always travel with them, but for some reason on the Camino I left them at home. I got a little bit too obsessed with optimizing the weight, I think. Anyways, at the Camino, I showered every day with my Dove bar soap, and I washed my clothes every once in a while, so I was not stinky, I hope, but I also did not smell like anything. And sometimes I just think it would have been nice to have a little spritz of perfume and smell different again. So next time I would definitely bring this thing with me again. And the next thing that I regret that I did not bring are some laundry detergent sheets. I usually always travel with them because they're just so nice to do hand wash and also wash when I have access to a washing machine. But for the Camino, I left them at home because I thought, well, we're gonna bring the Dr. Bronners to wash by hand anyway, so I don't need that. But some albergs, they had washing machines that you could use for free or just very cheap for like €1, but then they did not supply the laundry detergent. And we also did a few rest days, and there we usually stayed in apartments where we had access to a washing machine. But since we did not bring any laundry detergent sheets, we always ended up buying the cheapest laundry detergent we could find in the next supermarket, and then we just shared with others or gave away what we had or just left it there at the end. So it would definitely have been nice to just bring a few sheets, and honestly 4 or 5 of those things would not really have made any difference in my luggage. So if you find this interesting to see how my travel gear holds up, consider subscribing to my channel because I regularly talk about how I use my gear and how it's going. If you want, you could also consider maybe subscribing to my monthly newsletter. I will link it below. And other than that, thanks for watching and I see you in the next video. Bye!